So I grew up on things like Carry On films
Yeah.
and sort of slapstick comedy, and I
Yeah.
think there is an element of that. And I think also, I guess in terms of like the sort of culture that I come from, if you are thinking about a sort of transgression, that's the kind of level of comedy that you would use
Yes.
to
Okay.
sort of think about something like that. So
Yeah.
I mean, so with these pieces, you've got the arse that's sticking out. So that's obviously quite comedic, but it's much more so in the kind of the cushions and the wall hangings that I've been making. So this is another element of my practice which I've kind of developed over the pandemic
Yeah.
as a way of sustaining myself, really.
Yeah.
I had quite a few exhibitions which were cancelled or postponed, so
Mm.
this was a way of actually using what I have in my studio here
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
readily available, and it's a way of kind of being a bit more sustainable. But also, I mean, things like the sort of penis cushions, there's an element of kitsch to them as well. I think I quite like the sort of the kitschness of them.
Yeah.
I think, and the kind of the bringing together of the different fabrics, and yeah. So I like to feel. I kind of feel like it's a different strand of queer art, if I can call it that. Like
Yeah.
sort of the kitsch aspect of it. I think.
Yeah.
Like,
You can call it whatever you want, but
okay. All right. Like.
no, definitely that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, and I think you sort of talk about sort of like the dynamism of sort of like the shapes that you're creating on the drapes, and I think again for me that's really like the movement really follows through for all of that, and because obviously fabric, there's so much movement in fabric itself, and sort of thinking about sort of the way that it can catch the light potentially when it's sort of like when it's covered in embroidery and things like that. So I feel like that really comes out actually in a lot of different ways in your work. But yeah, I just wanted to ask a bit more about the studio itself, because obviously I feel like this is a working, living, breathing piece of artwork in itself. And just, I guess just thinking about like, obviously it's where you house all of the different elements of scraps of fabric and stuff, but it's like, what does the studio mean to you? What does the space sort of do for you and your practice?
Like, so I've had this studio now for, I think it was like 2011 when I moved in, so quite a while. And I think it takes time to understand what a studio is. So, I mean, at the moment, I kind of feel like I need a big clear out. Like I store over time, eventually, like after maybe every 2 or 3 years, you have to like kind of have a bit of a clear out. And it has to be fit for purpose again. But this space has changed so many times based on what I've been working on. So I've had like huge installations being made in here before, and like much smaller pieces with the kind of the cushions and stuff. It's a storage space. It has to be a storage space, especially if you're working in 3D. So hence the reason why I've got the mezzanine. But also this space, because it has probably the best light in primary. I've got all my plants here as well, though. So it is,
which are brilliant.
It's a nurturing space, I would say. That's how I see my studios, definitely.
Yeah.
Like I'm not a minimalist, that's for sure.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, that's okay. It's just different ways of approaching it. But yeah, I guess I just really feel like because so much of your work is on display, I just sort of really feels like there's a lot that sort of feeds into it, allows your ideas to sort of feed off one after the other.
But also that was something that came through different people, because I never used to have any of my work on display at all.
Okay.
And so people were saying to me, well, why not have it out? Like when curators come, when other people come, and also because you do, I guess, like feed off ideas and stuff. But the other thing as well is, like, although I use fabric, I use loads of different materials.
Yeah.
So there has to be a lot of discipline in terms of how you put things away, where things go, keeping things clean.
Yeah.
So things have to be in their various different places. Because once you get a mark on a piece of fabric, it's ruined. It's like so you have to be really aware of that sort of part of it as well, though. So
and you were talking about obviously the fact that you've had to store some of your work, and just thinking about like what's next for some of those pieces of work. Like, do you think that because I know that some of these works are coming back, aren't they? They're sort of like coming back into exhibitions that are coming next year. But just sort of like need to try and sort of like maybe get some of your work into collections, and thinking about different ways, I guess, of sharing that work. That maybe you were talking about maybe more sort of like commercial avenues. But yeah, because it'd be really great, because it's such a shame to have it all sort of
stored.
Away.
It is. But there is a really interesting kind of disconnect or split, I would say, between what happens in a gallery and what happens in an artist studio.
Yeah.
So the majority of that work was for an exhibition that I had, which was, we were working towards it for about a year and a half. And I had a full gallery team of techs plus a few extras to help install that work over a 2-week period, and also to help make the work as well. Which is absolutely, I mean, you can't really not go with something like that because it's such a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah.
But when the exhibition finishes and it all has to come back here, I physically couldn't install that by myself or do anything with it.
Yes.
Because there was a whole gallery team that enabled me to put that work on.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't not do those opportunities, but then also what do you do with them once the work comes back as well? And also because that work was made very specifically for that space.
Yeah.
It's like, how can you resurrect it? What happens to it afterwards?